Hey, I'm back. And if I look tired, that's because I am tired. I've been working really hard on some really cool stuff coming by the end of this year that we'll talk about a little more by the end of this year, but just wanted to give you the heads up. But for this video, we'll stay on track and talk about the topic at hand. Do you all remember this bass? You probably do, but if you don't, this is the Thunderhorse 4 from McGrath that I kind of had a little bit of a hand in brainchilding. There's a whole video up here if you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, we'll just touch on it quickly. This is a 4-string passive bass. It's got a Thunderbird in the neck, a P bass in the middle position, and a jazz bass at the bridge with 3 volumes and a tone, 100% passive. And this is the brand new Thunderhorse 5, also from McGrath. You'll see that there are some similarities and some differences to the 4-string model that we're going to cover quite in depth in this video. But first, let's just hear a tone. So much like the 4-string behind me, I did have a little bit of a hand in conceiving the general layout and setup of this bass. We're going to talk about some of the choices that I made and why. But before we get into what the base model, B-A-S-E model of the Thunderhorse 5 is, I should let you know right up front that McGrath has a new bass builder on their website in which you can configure virtually any set of options for this that you can think of. There is a swimming pool route under here, so you can do a variety of different pickup configurations, even after the fact if you wanted to. But from the bass builder, I mean, you can do any combination of Music Man StingRay pickups, P pickups, jazz pickups, and soap bars. So if you want 3 Ps, 3 jazzes, a JPJ, 3 soap bars, I think you can even do 4 soap bars, 3 Music Man pickups, whatever combination you want to do with whatever wood. Top of my head, I kind of forget. This one's either ash or swamp ash, but it's definitely ash either way. But you can get one of those two. You can get a maple, a mahogany, and I'm sure down the road there's going to be other options as well. We got an ebony fingerboard and a maple neck. So on one hand, this bass is kind of straightforward and pretty simple to understand. On another hand, it's a little complicated. So let's roll down the options. We've got 3 EMG HZ soap bars. The EMG HZ means that they're passive. They're not low impedance, and the pickups themselves are not powered by a 9-volt battery, and the type of vibe and sound that passive pickups are known for. Then moving right down here, we've got 3 two-way switches. They're basically on-off switches for each pickup, so you can have any combination of these pickups on or off. The 4-string had a similar thing where it was 3 volumes and a tone. This one's got 3 switches. And the reason it's got 3 switches is because down here we now have an active 3-band EQ, followed by a master volume, which is push-pull for passive and active. And I actually just got a text from McGrath saying, can you mention in your video about the Thunderhorse 5 that we are running a site-wide sale to celebrate your new video with over $500 off. So if you go over to McGrathguitars.com, whether you build a custom bass from scratch using the bass builder, or you pick something that's in the inventory and ready to ship, just mention this video and you'll get $500 off. So in the video about the Thunderhorse 4, which hopefully you've seen by this point, I went through a number of basses on this wall that was kind of some of the inspiration behind putting that together and some of the specific choices that I made. And when it comes to this bass, similar things apply with different basses. So like we touched on, these are EMG HZ passive soap bars with an active EMG B30, I believe. It's either the B30 or B64. I think it's the 30. 3-band EQ. And that specific combination was inspired by this bass. This is Josh's LTD TA500 Thomann signature. It's 4-string, but it's still EMG HZ passive soap bars and an EMG B30 3-band EQ. Now, obviously, there's some construction differences. I believe this is a neck through, and I think it's all maple, if I'm not mistaken. Not 100% sure on the woods, but this bass has a specific and particular type of tone to it that nothing else on this wall, or nothing else that I've ever played, sounds quite like it. Now, again, you may love it, you may hate it. I'm in the camp of I love what this thing sounds like, and it's just got a vibe and a sauce and a flavor that's basically unmatched. However, despite some differences in the materials and the construction of this bass and the fact that there's an additional pickup, this retains a lot of the same tonal mojo that the LTD has. There's just something about these passive HZs through this 3-band that just has, how do I put this? It still has that kind of passive tone that you'd come to expect from these pickups with maybe like a little more definition put in them to where it's not, I know people love to use this word sterile when it comes to the active, DC soap bars. They eliminate a lot of what a lot of people don't like about that while still retaining more definition and more clarity, but unmistakably kind of that passive thing. I don't know why it becomes like ever increasingly difficult to describe tone, but anyway, that's that. But just a second ago, I alluded to this has different materials and different construction. This bass is heavy. I think it's 9 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. I'll put the real number right here, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 pounds, and it's got some weight to it, which kind of harkens to this bass. Now, this bass, again, is also quite heavy. It's not quite as heavy as the Thunderhorse 5 because, again, it's a 4-string, so obviously there's less material on the neck and all of that sort of stuff that goes into that. But this is another bolt-on swamp ash bass. But electronics aside, where obviously this has got a different pickup configuration and electronic configuration, this bass is heavy, and that absolutely translates into the tone. Now, we can debate the tone wood thing until the sun goes down, and it's not really a difference that you can measure with EQ or output like you can with swapping the pickups, right? You change the pickup model, you change the pickup position, you change the pickup material. Those are all gigantic differences in tone that you can easily identify. That one's got more top end, that one's got more output, right? We're always talking about tone in an EQ sense and usually an output sense. Actives are hotter than passives, humbuckers are hotter than single coils are brighter than soap bars, right? It's always EQ and output. I'm not gonna go into all the physics behind it. I think I touched on that in another video, but what that means for us is that while this bass may not be overtly brighter or noticeably louder than something similar made out of a different wood, what this bass has and what this bass offers is kind of dynamic control. When you record it and you see the waveforms that you've just recorded, the difference between your hardest peaks and your more quiet kind of, notes, I guess, for lack of a better word, there's less of a difference between the loudest and the quietest parts. Now, obviously, yes, compressor pedals, compressor units, compressors in general do that, but they're doing it in a different way. For lack of a better term, it's more artificial because it's coming after the fact and it's manipulating an already pre-existing waveform. Where something like this, something that's heavier with a more dense wood, is controlling those dynamics at the source in a very real, organic way. Now again, maybe that matters to you, maybe that doesn't matter to you. That doesn't matter. That's what's happening here, and I'm someone who prefers that. I'm someone who, like I've talked about with the EMG thing, I know what I'm going to get from that performance or from, that response. I know what I'm going to get. I like what I'm going to get. It makes the job down the line of the post-processing or the mixing or whatever it is that you're going to do in your audio recording. It just makes it easier when you can have as much consistency here as possible. And I've been doing this long enough now to where I've heard enough basses. And again, I don't know if my mind expanded or if I'm losing my mind. There's probably going to be disagreement on that in the comments. Most of you will probably say I'm losing my mind, is that I can hear the weight of the bass in the tone. They can be identical electronics, they can be different electronics. There's certain things that your ear starts to pick up on when the bass is lighter that is different than when the bass is heavier. And again, one's not necessarily objectively better than the other. You're going to prefer what you like. I prefer the heavier basses, as much as my back disagrees with me on it. I like the sound of what more weight on the instrument does.
Chris was talking about another iteration of the Thunderhorse right after the 4 dropped, right? And that was the one that we had talked about, but definitely Chris's brainchild. I was thinking it would be kind of the same pickup layout for the 5, right? But what Chris had suggested was to do three soap bars, which in my head I was like, that's ridiculous. That's gonna look stupid as hell. Very rarely has this happened, but I was wrong. I was wrong. It did not look stupid. When they pulled it out of the gig bag, I was like super surprised, but in a good way. I was like, man, that's freaking rad. Like, that looks great. And the pickups, the spacing, the layout, ergonomically and aesthetically, it did not look weird. It did not look off. I was not a big EMG person up until I started working with Chris in the bass channel a few years ago. I like them a lot. I still not my favorite, but they are fantastically consistent and they perform and sound well. And that bass went with me to a gig, a For Funsies gig out in Henderson at this place called Gold Mine Tavern. We ran it, right? We went out there and played it, and it sounded freaking great.
Now, in the case of going 3 soap bars as opposed to another TPJ, as we've been calling it around here, Thunderbird Precision Jazz, the reason that we went all 3 soap bars is that, again, in my experience is mine and yours is yours, and everyone can have a different thing. Thank God for the bass builder that you can put whatever configuration you want. I wanted to go 3 soap bars because, in my experience, it seems like soap bars, and particularly active basses that have soap bars, whether the soap bar itself is passive or active, low impedance, 9-volt battery, that sort of thing. It just seems like the response on a 5-string is way more consistent amongst a soap bar equipped bass than a PJ or even a Jazz. I've played 5-string PJs in the past, and while they're not terrible, there's just something about it that's not resonating with what I want to hear and what I want to feel and what I want the bass to do. I've always been way more happy and satisfied with a soap bar equipped 5-string. And in the case of a couple years ago when we did the 5-string Squier jazz bass, it's 100% passive VVT 5-string 2 single coil pickups jazz bass. I can't tell you how much I loathed that bass tone. It was okay on the normal 4, the E through G, but for some reason the B lost all definition and most of its output to where the B string shouldn't even have been there, in my opinion. I just really did not like that sound of a passive single coil 5-string. So my experience and my findings have found that 5-strings are usually better benefited from some kind of active technology and or soap bar pickups. Because again, with the soap bar, there's, I don't want to overuse this word too much, but somewhat of a compression going on. Again, not the way 1176 compresses or something like that, but more dynamic control that is then further accentuated by having the EQ in there, because once you have a preamp, there's kind of a threshold of how much you can amplify before it starts to compress. And I just think the physics of that giant B string is definitely aided by having some of that on board. beyond the electronics and the tone, obviously we've got some blacked out Hipshot hardware. We've got the Hipshot Clover tuners. And as you can see from the serial number, this is Thunderhorse 5 number 1. There's also a heavy-duty black Hipshot string tree, which is wildly important for these kind of style basses with a non-angled headstock. Moving down to the bottom, we've got a black 5-string Hipshot kick-ass bridge with the brass inserts, black Dunlop strap locks, 6-bolt neck joint, and you'll see here on the back it's routed for two 9-volts, giving you 18-volt operation.
Kudos to Chris for the idea on the soap bars. The EMGs were the way to go for that for sure. Cormac's wife painted this bass too, and it is phenomenal. I mean, it's definitely, if you've been to Las Vegas, like we have, I feel, the best sunsets ever. This bass reminds me of that Vegas sunset, like when I was a kid in the 90s, and you know, I'd be riding my bike or with my friends or playing music in my buddy's garage or whatever. Those sunsets were like something that always kind of stuck out to me in my head, and that bass really brings that out nostalgia-wise. So another reason why I love that bass. The paint job on it is unique. It's one of one. Cormac's wife is definitely the more talented of the two of them. Her paint jobs and her attention to detail is fantastic.
So this one is called Coral Sand, and that's exactly, this is the color palette, is that it's like sand on a coral beach. And there's a lot of different layers to it that come up. It's almost like sending something to the kiln. So things come up to the surface and you get all these little dynamic pops of color and shimmer, and then some of the wood coming through. And I do this technique where I kind of drag so that there's no hard edge, but so everything kind of looks like it's crystals in these little like triangles, almost like doing hair. Someone who does hair will know what that means. It's kind of the way hair grows, and then wood is similar. So I try and like celebrate the wood and not take away from what's already there, but then I also don't want it to look like a coffee table because no one wants a coffee table bass. And this one's really, peach was the Pantone color of the year last year. Since they have moved on, and I'm very attached to the peach from last year, so it's our most popular color. Which makes me feel really good about basses, because I'm like, you know, peach is a good color.
Cormac's a great builder, I'm just joking. All the basses he made, and especially his willingness to take a chance on our collaboration for our science project. Hopefully you guys are enjoying those, because I know he said he's moved a lot of them. So I'm happy for you. If you have one of the Thunderhorses, it is bass channel approved for sure. And the Thunderhorse 5 is something that you should also definitely consider. That 5-string EMG is freaking rad.
So all in all, I'm really happy with the route that we ended up going with the Thunderhorse 5. And despite its obvious differences in electronics and pickup configurations and having an active EQ on board, I think it retains a lot of the spirit and the usability of the original passive 4-string. Again, like we touched on, having the soap bars and the active EQ on the 5-string make it to where whichever combination you choose, whether you want just neck, just middle and neck, all three, just bridge, your favorite pickup combination becomes distinct, unique, but also equally consistent in its general output, tone, vibe, and usability. course, having it be about 9 pounds, again, I forget exactly how much it weighs, but having it be heavier, having it have more mass gives it just a very consistent, solid, dynamic controlled, professional tone. I don't really know how else to put it, but again, it becomes apparent when you compare it to something else that's lighter and has different electronics. So again, don't forget to check out the bass builder and configure your own. You can copy this one for one. You can change some of it. You can change all of it, both electronics, woods, and color. So there's some really rad colors on there. The Violet Storm is one of my favorites, but this coral sand finish has become kind of a favorite amongst the viewers, and I gotta say, it also looks pretty great. So as Forrest Gump says, I think that's all I have to say about that. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a comment, let me know what you thought. Give it a like, give it a subscribe. Whatever you want to do is cool with me. Thank you very much for watching. Be safe, and I'll see you next time.